Hi guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of The Heathen Vegan. On this week's episode, I'm going to share with you my gluten-free, vegan, peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. Before I get right into baking, I'm going to show you some of the ingredients that I'll be using for these cookies. To start off, I'm going to start with Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. I really like this brand. This is like my favorite gluten-free flour brand to buy. I just started buying the 1-to-1 baking flour, and the reason why is because usually when I bake, I buy all the separate flours. I buy white rice and brown rice, and I buy my almond flour, which I'll get to that one in a minute. And then there's a lot of mixing that comes involved, and it makes baking kind of a complex project. So I discovered this. This is recently new as far as I know. And another reason why I bought it, and I'll show you over here in the ingredients, we can get up close to it, is down in the bottom it says xanthan. Now xanthan is a very important ingredient to use when you're about to go and bake gluten-free. Xanthan goes and kind of expands the flour, and it makes it more of like traditional baking flour. So this is going to be the base. I have two because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to open up the other bag. And again, if you're going to use this recipe, and if you're going to, go your own way with it, that's fine. I'm just showing you what I'm using. What I am going to do with my recipe, because my recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, is I am going to put about a half a cup to a cup of the superfine almond flour in there. And I'm going to do it because I find that almond flour, when I bake, it really, it makes the cookies really soft, and I like soft cookies. My family likes soft cookies. So that is going to be the base of our cookies right there. Now to move on to eggs. This right here is Energy Egg Replacer. I have been using this egg replacer for as long as I've been a vegan, and that's been 24 years now. And I've used this in every recipe that I've used to bake with. Because of the pandemic and what's going on right now, a lot of things are in high demand, and there's a shortage of a lot of things. And this happens to be one of them, which kind of stinks. This is my favorite egg replacer to use. What I have right here, again, Bob's Red Mill. And this is their version of egg replacer. As you can see, hang on, I got my new camera, so I'm like zooming and stuff like that. It says it's gluten-free and it's vegan. That was my dog, sorry about that. And I've used this once before. Now, I don't know if it's in my own head or not because I'm so used to using the egg replacer. And I gotta tell you, when I was looking for egg replacers, I pretty much went to like 6 or 7 different grocery stores within the area where I lived, and I couldn't find it. So I decided to give this a try, and it's not bad. But like I said, I don't know if it's all in my head or not. But the last time I used it to make these cookies, I felt as though there was a bit of a different flavor and texture to the cookies. Because as you can see, I'm not going to open up the bag, but the egg replacer here is more like powder, like kind of like flour. And the mixing ratio with the water is a little bit different than this right here. And as you can see, some of it, I have a little bit left, not enough to bake with, fell on my counter. And this is very, very fine and very powdery. So I think my Bob's Red Mill gives a different texture. It doesn't make the cookies bad. It's just different from the one I'm used to. Okay, so for peanut butter, I'm going to use Skippy. I think Skippy's really good as far as I know. It's gluten-free and it's vegan. Back a long time ago when I became a vegan, I used to like Jif. And then I saw in Jif's ingredients that they use mono and something disaccharides. I don't even think I pronounced that right. But that basically is animal fat. And, I don't want animal fat in my peanut butter, so we're sticking with Skippy. This over here is a stick of margarine. It's just your basic run-of-the-mill. This is Imperial. As far as I know, this is also gluten-free and vegan. And then over here, I have my carob chips. I can't show you the packaging because I threw out the packaging a long time ago, but these are gluten-free and these are vegan too. And so that's it for the list of ingredients that I'm going to use. Obviously, you're going to need, if you're going to follow this recipe, you're going to need brown sugar, light brown sugar, regular sugar. You're going to need vanilla and baking soda and salt. Let's get to baking, guys. So now that I showed you the list of ingredients, and I will leave a link to the ingredients down below, along with the precise measurements. I know in my previous cooking episodes, I didn't have any measurements for you. It's basically because when I cook, I I don't normally use measurements. I pretty much just go with how I feel. Now, baking is obviously a whole different beast. You have to make sure that your measurements are precise or it's not going to come out the way that you want it to. With that being said, the first step I like to do is I like to get my egg ready because in the recipe you have to have a room temperature margarine, vegan butter, whatever the case may be, and your egg has to be ready. So I still don't have a stand for my camera. I do have a new camera, so hopefully this video looks a lot better than the last ones. But I don't have a stand yet, so there's going to be a lot of pausing and turning off and coming back on. What I'm going to do now is with this egg replacer, I'll tell you real quick how to use it. It says that to make one whole egg, you have to combine a tablespoon of this egg replacer with 2 tablespoons of water. What I mentioned before with my other egg, with the energy egg replacer, that has to be hot water. So I'm going to assume with this one, it has to be hot water also. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go get my measurements together. I'm going to mix this up, and I'll be back in a minute. I got my egg replacer mixed up. The measurements for that was 1 tablespoon of egg replacer with 2 tablespoons of water. It says also in the recipe you have to stir it and you have to let it stand for a minute because it needs the thickening. With that being said, I do like to make my egg first, and I like to make it first. It's not the first ingredient you have to do. The first thing you have to do is you have to get your butter, and you have to get your peanut butter, and you have to mix that together too. But I do like to make the egg replacer first because that's kind of time consuming. I like to get the time consuming things out of the way because the rest of the recipe, now that I have the Bob's Red Mill all-in-one baking flour, baking flour, that cuts down a lot of prep time too because like I said before, I used to have to go and just mix all the flours myself because you can't just use one type of flour when you're baking. You have to do a different, let me try that again. You have to do various amounts of different types of flour in order to get a good consistency and I talk really fast, my apology. And in order to get a good tasting dessert. With that being said, because the fact that Bob's has gone and done this, which is fantastic, that cuts down the prep time too. Now the recipe does call for 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So I'll be using this flour, a cup of this, and then I'll be using a 1/2 cup of the almond meal because I do like the way that the almond flour tastes and the consistency that it has. If you have an allergy to nuts or almonds, then, I mean, you're going to have to just use 1.5 of the baking flour. Now, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to get my margarine has settled down. It's now at room temperature, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to also do my 3/4 cup of Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Well, not Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, sorry. Take 2 on that one. So I'm going to do my stick of margarine, and then I'm going to do my 3/4 of a cup of my Skippy peanut butter. I'm going to put that in the bowl. I'm going to mix up the beater, and I'll show you what that looks like. Can't even talk. Take 2. And I'll show you what that looks like as soon as I get it all together. I have all of my ingredients ready to go. I have my Skippy peanut butter. I'm not going to use a measuring cup for the Skippy peanut butter because I've been making this recipe for over 20 years, so I pretty much can eyeball the amount of peanut butter that is to put in there. And I also have together my 1/3 cup of granulated sugar and my 1/3 cup of brown sugar. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put the margarine and I'm going to put the peanut butter into the bowl. I'm going to mix it until it's a good consistency. Obviously, like my grandmother says, make sure you always scrape your sides. So I have a scraper. Once that gets like that, I'm going to put in my my sugar and my butter, and then I'm going to beat that until it's fluffy. So I'm going to do that right now, and as soon as I'm done doing that, I'll come back and I'll give you guys a little glimpse of what it looks like. What I've done so far is I've just taken the peanut butter and the butter and I've mixed it until it was a nice creamy consistency. I'm going to try to do a close-up on this so you can see it. I don't know if the lighting from the stove is going to help out the color of it or not. I'm still learning how to do this stuff as I go, so have some patience with me. So that's what it looks like right now with just the margarine and just the peanut butter in it. So now I'm going to add my 1/3 cup of brown sugar and my 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Thanks, Goliath. That was nice of you. My dog just went and took his dog bowl and picked it up and walked across the kitchen with it, so now there's dog food everywhere. I'll get to that and later. But anyway, so back to this. A lot of times when you bake, like say I have a chocolate cake recipe that when I bake, I have to do the sugar in spurts. So it calls for like 2 cups of sugar, and then I have to like put the sugar in a 1/4 cup at a time until, it beats in, it mixes nice with the rest of the batter. With this particular recipe, that's not the case. You can just dump in both sugars You can just dump in both sugars at the same time. I'm going to do that now, and I'll be back in a minute. I just finished putting in the sugars. I don't know if you can see or not, but now the mixture isn't as creamy as it was before I put that in. It's gritty, and I want to let you know, if you guys don't bake a lot or if you don't cook a lot, that's perfectly okay. You're going to get your texture back, your fluff back, once you add the egg and the vanilla and the soy milk to it, or the almond milk, or whatever kind of milk you guys want to use. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put those in. I'm going to show you the difference after I do. I'm actually going to show you this real quick. I thought the recipe was going by real quick. So with this recipe, you have to make the solid ingredients separate from like the liquid ingredients and the creamy ingredients. I guess that's the right word for peanut butter and margarine, right? So with that being said, it calls for 1.5 cups of flour. I put in 1 cup of the Bob's 1-to-1 baking flour, and then I put in 1/2 cup of the almond flour. In addition to that, you have to put in 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. What I like to do after I do that is I like just to sift through it with a fork, just to make sure that it's getting aerated, especially the baking soda is getting distributed evenly through the flour, and that the flour itself is actually getting mixed together. So that looks good. I'm going to let that sit for a minute or two so the baking soda can do its thing with the salt. And now I'm going to go get the milk and I already showed you the egg and the vanilla. With the egg, it calls for 1 egg. The milk is going to be 2 tablespoons, and then the vanilla is a teaspoon. I'm going to get those situated into the bowl, and I'll be back in a second. I actually wanted to show you guys this real quick before I mix up the ingredients. Another difference between the Bob's the Bob's egg replacer and the Energy egg replacer is, can you see that little like gelatinous glob right there? When you first mix the egg, it's a liquid form, and then as it sits, it gets a little bit more, I guess for lack of a better word, gelatinous. And with that being said, another reason why I don't know if I like this or not is because with the Energy egg replacer, it stays in liquid form, and it works really great. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that real quick. I'm going to mix this up and show you what it looks like afterwards. Beating this on medium-high for about 2 minutes should do the trick. Make sure you have like a little spatula or something so you can scrape the sides. Usually I can tell that it's ready once I start getting those nice ripples right there. That means that it's going to make for a really nice and fluffy cookie. Another thing I forgot to tell you at the beginning of the episode is that when you first start the whole process, make sure you preheat your oven to 375. This is going to be, I don't know if any of you are familiar with working with gluten-free flour. When you do in your baking, the consistency of it is not going to be with your traditional wheat flour. It's going to be really, really soft, and it's going to be really, really sticky. So you're going to need to either put it in the freezer or in the refrigerator for like 10 minutes, not too long. I'm going to get this together, and I'm going to be back with all the ingredients mixed together in the bowl. Again though, once you have all like your liquid and your smooth and your creamy ingredients together, that part of the show is done. Once you have your solid ingredients, your flour, your salt, and your baking soda together, that part will be done too. Then after, when you're ready, you'll put half of the mixture into this. You'll use your beater. Then you'll put the other half in with your chocolate chips, and you'll use your hand spatula. I'm not exactly too sure what this is called, but this is what I'm going to use after I get the rest of my ingredients into the bowl. That's also what I use to scrape the bowl. I just took my dough out of the freezer. I didn't have any room for it in the fridge because I've been juicing lately, so I have like my fridge is full of vegetables. But here it is. It's a pretty nice consistency. It doesn't stick. It's pretty malleable. I wanted to show you this real quick. So once it comes out of the freezer, you can start to roll it. I think this is probably about 1.5 inches circumference. And that's really good. This right here is going to yield you, depending on how big you roll your balls, probably about your balls, sorry. This is going to yield you about 2 dozen cookies, 2.5. Another thing you need to do before you actually put it onto your baking pan is you need to roll it in sugar because of the fact there's not a lot of sugar in this and there's a lot of peanut butter in this, so it's going to be dry if you don't. And then you're going to put it on your baking sheet. I use my baking sheet a lot, so it's a little bit used. And then you're just going to put it on there, and you're going to continue to do that until you have 12 on there. I'm going to go and put my 12 on there, and I'll show you what it looks like and what you do just before you put it into the oven. I got all my cookies, or my cookie batter, I should say, on my baking pan. What I do next is I flatten it out, and to be honest with you, it's kind of my favorite part of the whole process. You can use a spatula, you can use whatever you'd like. I like to use my hands, and I just squash them down so that they're flat. And that pretty much does it. They're ready to go into the oven. What I will say real quick, now that they're in the oven, cooking time is going to depend on the consistency of how you like your cookie. I like to leave my cookies a little bit underbaked because of the fact that I like them soft and chewy. They're not going to be completely underbaked. They're going to be a little bit brown around the edges. What I'm going to do after they're brown around the edges, but not too brown, because like I said, I like them to stay soft, and if you keep them in there longer, you'll have a crispier cookie. So again, that's going to depend on your preference, if you like a crispy cookie or if you like a soft cookie. After they come out of the oven, because there's going to be a couple of batches, I usually put them on my baker's rack. I let them cool for a quick second. I let them cool long enough to put the next batch of cookies onto the baking sheet, and then I go and I put them into an airtight container after I put the second batch of cookies into the oven. And I do that because once I do and I put the cover on, it's going to seal this, and it's going to create a moisture lock so that the cookies, once they cool, will stay soft. I wanted to show you this real quick. I'm getting ready to put my second batch into the oven. I unfortunately didn't do things the way that I explained I was going to, because I had a phone call come in and it took a little bit longer than I expected. And my cookies are a little bit darker than I would like, but I think it should be okay, because the next batch I'm just going to keep an eye on and put those cookies directly on top of these guys, so that hopefully they stay nice and soft. Let me get this on. Oh, there we go. Push the excess air out. This is my second batch. I have it nice and flattened. And I'm going to put this in the oven. And here they are. Made from scratch. Gluten-free. Vegan. Peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. These ones just came out of the oven. They look really, really good. Alright, my friends, I hope you get a chance to try this recipe. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of the Heathen Vegan. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please leave a like. If you'd like to see more of my online gluten-free vegan cooking, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you took this recipe and you made it your own, as always, I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments box. Until next time, you guys, have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.